I never thought betrayal could come wrapped in family love and warm smiles, Sunday dinners, and words like "we're so proud of you." But it did, and when it happened, it didn't come from a stranger. It came from my own parents. It started one quiet evening in my small Chicago apartment. I was finishing some late-night accounting work for a client when my phone buzzed, "Mom." I smiled instinctively. I still loved hearing her voice, even at 28. "Sweetheart," she began softly, "we need to talk. It's about the house." Something in her tone made me sit up. What happened? There was a pause, then a sigh. "We're behind on the mortgage. Your dad's hours got cut again, and I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you, but we might lose the house if we don't pay $50,000 soon." I froze. That house wasn't just walls and wood. It was where I grew up, where we carved pumpkins every Halloween, where Dad built me a treehouse that leaned slightly to the left, but still stood strong through every storm. "Mom," I said quietly, "I can help." She hesitated. "Honey, we'd never ask," I'm offering. I interrupted. "It's family." And that's how it began, a daughter's heart trying to hold together a home that was never meant to fall apart. I transferred the money that same week. $50,000, my emergency savings, my down payment for the house I'd dreamed of buying someday. I told myself it was worth it. Family comes first, always, Dad called that night. "You've always been the responsible one, Maddie," he said proudly. "Your sister could learn a thing or two from you." I smiled, feeling warm inside. I didn't know that line, that little joke, would soon taste like poison. 2 months passed. I didn't hear much about the mortgage, but I trusted them. Every time I asked, Mom would say, "Don't worry, everything's being sorted." Then one Friday afternoon, while scrolling through Instagram during lunch, I saw something that stopped my heart. There, front and center, was my younger sister Leela twirling in a glittering white gown. The caption read, "Can't believe my dream wedding is finally happening. So grateful to Mom and Dad for making this day possible." A wedding, I blinked trying to make sense of it. Leela wasn't even engaged last I heard. And Mom and Dad made it possible. I scrolled further photos of a ballroom filled with chandeliers, a designer cake, custom floral arrangements, and a caption from Dad's account. "Nothing is too good for our little girl's special day." My chest tightened. My stomach turned cold. I called Mom immediately. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then a text appeared. "Sweetheart, we'll call you later. Leela's rehearsal dinner is starting. Love you." Rehearsal dinner. I put my phone down, trembling. The truth hit me like a slow, steady wave. They hadn't used that money for the house. They used it for her wedding. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at the city skyline. My heart kept replaying every thank you, every "we're so proud of you," every lie. I wanted to believe there was a mistake, maybe the mortgage had been paid already, but my instincts told me otherwise. So I checked. I logged into the bank portal that handled my parents' mortgage. I had access because I'd helped them set it up years ago. The last payment had been 3 months ago. The balance hadn't moved. Not a single cent had gone toward the house. I felt my breath catch in my throat. I opened my laptop and started typing not words of anger, but numbers, records, receipts. Proof. My mind was in accountant mode now, but my heart. It was splintering. The next morning, I called my parents. Mom answered, her voice bright. "Honey, how are you? Where's my money, Mom?" The silence on the other end was so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. "Madeline," she finally whispered, "please don't make this harder than it already is." Harder? I laughed bitterly. "You lied to me. You said you needed it to save the house. Your sister's wedding was important," she said quickly as if rehearsed. "You know how much pressure we've been under. Her fiancé is family, her fiancé is family." I cut her off. "You took my money to impress strangers." Dad's voice came into the background. "Don't raise your voice at your mother, Maddie. We're family. We'll pay you back." When? I asked. "After the honeymoon, after the next lie." He went silent. That night, I didn't sleep. I walked around my apartment, memories flashing through my mind, Mom cutting coupons to save money, Dad fixing broken things around the house, Leela asking me for help with college bills. I believed in them, in us, and now they'd used my kindness like currency. The next week, I didn't attend the wedding. I didn't even reply to Leela's invitation, but she didn't seem to care. The photos flooded social media, her dancing, laughing, smiling, surrounded by people who didn't know the cost of her happiness. That's when something inside me shifted. I stopped crying. I stopped trying to understand. I realized they didn't see me as family anymore. They saw me as a resource. And resources can run dry. So I decided to disappear, not dramatically, but completely. I changed my number, moved out of my apartment, and took a new job offer in Boston. No forwarding address, no goodbyes, just silence. For the first time in my life, I stopped being the fixer. I let them face the mess they'd made. 3 months later, I received a voicemail from Dad. His voice cracked with something that sounded like regret. "Madeline, the bank's taking the house. We can't reach you. Please call us back." I didn't, because some lessons can only be learned when the noise fades, when the person who always said yes finally says nothing at all. But my story didn't end there. No, this was just the beginning of how silence became my power, and how karma found its way back home. Subscribe, because the sweetest revenge isn't anger, it's peace, success, and walking away stronger than they ever imagined. When you cut ties with the people who raised you, silence becomes its own kind of grief. You expect relief, but at night, it feels like standing in a room full of echoes, each one whispering your name. Boston was cold, lonely, but strangely healing. I rented a small apartment near the Charles River, where I could walk in the evenings and pretend the wind was washing away the pieces of my old life. I poured myself into work. The new firm was small but ambitious, specializing in financial consulting for struggling startups. The kind of place where long hours didn't scare me because work, unlike people, always paid you back. It was there I met Ethan Park, a soft-spoken co-founder with eyes that noticed everything but judged nothing. We became friends slowly, without expectation. He didn't ask about my past, and I didn't offer it. But one evening, after a long day crunching numbers, he said something that stuck with me. "You carry silence like armor," he said quietly, "but sometimes armor gets heavy." I smiled faintly. "It's lighter than disappointment." He didn't argue. Just nodded like he understood too well. Months passed. The company grew fast, and soon I was promoted to CFO. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the forgotten daughter. I felt whole. Then one afternoon, an email arrived from a bank I hadn't heard from since Chicago. My parents' mortgage lender. The subject line read, "Notice of foreclosure." I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I hadn't seen it, but curiosity or maybe compassion made me open it. Their house was being repossessed. A few years ago, I would have rushed to fix it again. I would have sent money, made calls, cried over the phone, begging them to tell me the truth. But this time, I just closed the laptop. That night, as I walked by the river, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes it's simply letting people face the world they built without you. Still, the part of me that loved them couldn't help but ache. Weeks later, I received a letter, actual paper, with my name written in Mom's shaky handwriting. I held it for days before opening it. "Maddie, we lost the house. Your father is sick. Leela's marriage fell apart. I don't blame you for leaving, but please, if you can, forgive us. We were foolish, proud, and scared. I wish I could undo what we did. Love, Mom." I reread it a dozen times. My anger should have burned hotter, but it didn't. It was fading like an old scar, still visible but no longer hurting. That weekend, I did something unexpected. I booked a flight back to Chicago. When I arrived, the house was empty, the lawn overgrown, windows boarded up. The neighborhood looked smaller somehow, like childhood memories shrank when seen through adult eyes. I found them in a small rental apartment a few blocks away. Mom opened the door, and when she saw me, she froze. Her face was thinner, her hair streaked with gray. "Madeline," she whispered. For a moment, I just looked at her. No rehearsed anger, no tears, just quiet truth. "I got your letter," I said. She stepped aside, letting me in. Dad was on the couch, coughing softly. His eyes lifted, and for a second, I saw the man who used to carry me on his shoulders. "I didn't come here to fight," I said gently. "I just wanted to see you." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We don't deserve that. Maybe not," I said softly, "but you're still my parents." We talked for hours. They told me everything, how the pressure to keep up appearances for Leela's wedding had spiraled out of control, how pride stopped them from admitting the truth, and Leela, she'd divorced within a year. Her husband had left her with debt and no apology. When I left that night, Mom hugged me tightly. "I wish we could start over," she whispered. "Maybe we can," I said, but differently. As I drove away, I didn't feel revenge anymore. I felt something deeper: control. I had the power to forgive or not, to help or not, and this time the choice was mine. A week later, I made a decision that would change everything. Our firm was launching a new division, financial recovery programs for families facing foreclosure. I proposed a partnership with several Chicago banks, including the one that had repossessed my parents' home. When the project launched, I became its public face, my story, my strength, my redemption. The press called it compassion-driven finance. I called it closure. During an interview, a journalist asked me what inspired this program. I smiled softly. Once, I helped someone who didn't value it. I learned the hard way that help only matters when it's respected. But forgiveness, that's the true currency of peace. The article went viral. My parents saw it. Leela saw it, and though none of them called me again, I knew they understood that was enough. Because I didn't need an apology anymore, I had built a life where betrayal no longer had power. But life, as it often does, wasn't done with me yet. 6 months later, I received another letter. This one wasn't from my parents. It was from a law firm. Inside was a single line that changed everything. Your parents listed you as the sole heir to their estate. Please contact us regarding the transfer of assets. I sat in silence, the letter trembling in my hands. They had nothing left but wanted me to have it all, and that bittersweet final gesture was how I learned that forgiveness can echo louder than revenge ever will. Subscribe, because sometimes the only closure you need is peace, not payback. The lawyer's letter sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it again. It wasn't fear holding me back. It was the weight of everything that came before every word, every betrayal, every silence that had built the distance between us. When I finally called, the attorney explained that my parents had passed away within months of each other. A stroke for my father, a quiet heart failure for my mother. He said their will was simple, they had left everything to me. There wasn't much, a small insurance payout, a car, a few savings bonds, and the contents of a storage unit. But it wasn't about money. It was about the choice they made in the end. I flew back to Chicago again. This time the city didn't feel heavy, it felt still, like the storm had finally passed. The lawyer handed me a small, weathered box from the storage unit. Your mother said this was meant for you, he said softly. Inside were old photographs, my childhood drawings, birthday cards I had forgotten existed, and one sealed envelope with my name written in her handwriting. Maddie, we were wrong. We hurt you when all you ever did was love us. The day you walked away, we realized what we had done. We thought money could fill the emptiness, but it only made the silence louder. We watched you grow from afar, your interviews, your company. You turned pain into purpose. We're sorry we couldn't say this sooner. We're proud of you, sweetheart. Always love, Mom and Dad. Tears slipped down my face before I even finished reading. For years, I had carried this invisible armor, thinking it kept me safe. But at that moment, I realized it had only kept me alone. I took the box home with me that night. I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights blur through my tears. The forgiveness I'd once thought was impossible began to settle in quietly, like dawn after a long night. A week later, I took a small trip back to my old neighborhood. The house I'd once saved and then lost had been renovated. A young couple lived there now. They were sitting on the porch laughing, their baby bundled in a blanket. For a moment, I thought about knocking, telling them I used to live there, but I didn't. That chapter wasn't mine anymore. It was theirs. I turned and walked down the street, breathing in the crisp Chicago air. For the first time in years, I wasn't haunted by what had been taken from me. I was grateful for what I'd found because of it. When I got back to Boston, I decided to do something that felt both painful and right. I donated half of the inheritance to the family financial recovery program I'd built in my parents' name. The press later asked me why. Because, I said simply, they taught me everything about what money can't buy. The other half of the money I used to buy a small lakeside cabin in Vermont. It wasn't big or flashy. It was quiet, peaceful. Mine, Ethan visited once by then. We had become close friends, maybe something more. As we sat by the fireplace, he looked around and smiled. You really built your peace, he said, piece by piece. I replied softly. I showed him the box of memories, the letter from my parents, and told him everything: the betrayal, the silence, the forgiveness. He listened, eyes soft. You didn't just forgive them, he said finally. You freed yourself. Maybe that was true. Because I didn't carry their mistakes anymore, I carried their love, the flawed human kind that breaks and mends in the same breath. Years later, I would go on to write a book about financial independence and emotional healing, part memoir, part guide. I called it What Money Couldn't Fix. It became a bestseller, but more than that, it became a bridge between who I was and who I had become. Sometimes when I speak at conferences, people ask me, if you could go back, would you still give them that $50,000? And I always say the same thing, yes, because that's how I learned the real cost of love. As I stand at the edge of every stage, looking at faces filled with hope and fear and dreams, I always think of my parents not as villains, but as people who tried, failed, and loved in imperfect ways. And when I return to my cabin, sit by the lake, and watch the water ripple under the moonlight, I whisper a small thank you to them. Not for what they did, but for what they taught me by doing it. Because in the end, forgiveness didn't erase the past, it redefined it. And that, I've learned, is the quietest, strongest kind of revenge. Subscribe, because sometimes the sweetest closure isn't about winning, it's about finally letting go.